And welcome back to Project Independence and You, Community Talk Radio. And we're in our second half of the show, Talk of the Town, with, of course, Kristina Liu, who is the radio show producer and brings these wonderful guests each week. I think every time I say it, I say a similar sentence. But the fact of the matter is, it is amazing. The guests are just incredible, and it's so fun to have someone on who was on like 5 years ago or even longer, and to see how they prosper. And not just in the, agency or whatever business they're in, but also personally and book writing. And it's really exciting. So it was great to have Karen on and to learn about all that, she's doing. And our listeners could definitely, connect with us, and we can get her information to anybody too.
Yeah, and literacy in Nassau, like you were saying, like a while ago, I was like scanning the history of all of our guests, and I was like, oh, let me like revisit people that we might have had on in the past, like bring them back. And I always remembered, Karen was like a very vibrant, person. And that's just my favorite segment on the show. And we're so fortunate because a lot of the guests that we have on, you can just like feel the vibration of their excitement to be doing what they're doing, and she's so invested in it. And her story about like how she got involved and her mom and her daughters, it's just incredible, and now she's got this other journey of becoming an author is just absolutely amazing. And the fact that Literacy Nassau, and I just want to reiterate, we talked about there, is a free program for you,
right,
is just so incredible. Especially, I was sitting here thinking people who are doing these ESL classes, the fact that this is a free service is just so huge and incredible. And I just like really want to stress to people, if you are interested in volunteering, so often we get calls from a lot of our seniors who say, they're looking for something to do. And I think this is a great opportunity, if you are available, the fact that you could kind of just meet at like local libraries and whatnot. So I just want to reiterate the number. It'll be up if you're watching the video. I'll have it at the end. But it's 516-867-3580 to get in touch with Literacy Nassau.
One of the things I think is really great about like what we just did this last hour with literacy is bring to people the attention of stuff that you don't think about.
Right, absolutely.
We all take for granted that we can read the street sign, like she described her mother couldn't get a license because she can't read the street sign. And it's no fault of her mother. It's just the way the cards were given to her when she was born. She has this dyslexia, which is not, it's not anything to be ashamed of. It's something you're born with.
Yeah.
And basically they don't know what causes it, but it's there. And, bringing out things like that. And the flip side of that is it should make you more grateful for the fact that you do have that ability.
Yep.
That you have the ability to read, you have the ability to talk, you can read. I mean, there's so many things in your life if you can't read or write.
I mean, look, exactly that. When she listed all the things with her mother, how it impacted all these different areas in her life that you wouldn't even, but when she said it, my brain was like, oh my gosh, that makes, so much sense. And I think that you're so right, Otto, because, we're always talking, especially in this time, to be more accepting and understanding of people. And it is very easy to make these assumptions, not knowing the struggle that's actually happening, to think like, here's her mother who's 80 years old and can remember second grade, being called on and to recite something and just not being able to, and then we know kids, and they don't, they're just like make their horrible comments, and it's this cycle. So that it just further, as you're growing up, just creates this social anxiety and an inability to, move on from that. And it's just, they're doing such incredible work. I mean, the fact that there is this, and she's just one of those people that you just want to be around. You could just tell that she's a great teacher to anyone of any age. It was just, and the fact that my mind was literally blown. I mean, I think my face was on this recording. You probably would see the shock at the time when she was saying that it wasn't until 2017, 2018 that dyslexia was even being recognized on an IEP for school, which literally blew my mind.
Right.
You know, because I mean, just in this short talk, we saw how that impacts so many areas of learning, and the fact that that wasn't included or being recognized was just still just a couple of years ago.
People with dyslexia have either, been, categorized or misdiagnosed with something else. So there's also that. I know that a lot of, kids from my generation who had that, and it wasn't really out yet. Like, we didn't start hearing dyslexia. I don't remember hearing that until maybe, I was in college, and all the kids that had to go to the reading room were kids that were more like, got like ADD or, that kind of a thing. And, because it's more of a distraction than actually, so it's so good at least that, they're, like you're saying, they finally in 2016 or 17.
Yeah, it was 2017 and didn't go into effect in 2018. I mean, that's just a few years ago. It's just, and
then go back to my era.
Right.
And the word was forget that didn't exist at all. And if you had a reading problem, you kind of had to go, there was a little something wrong with you maybe. So you had to go to special room and reading room, you called it. I don't even remember what it was called back then, but
but and this stigma, Otto, and I think that you touched upon it so well, because we've all, and there's this assumption that's automatically made that, you're stupid or you don't know, and it's like that you're lesser, instead of just making it a more inclusive, and times are better now. Listen, a lot of my friends are teachers and have children in the school system, and there is more of an understanding of not making it so stigmatized, and even when I was in school, I remember it was becoming more accepted that there were certain kids that, might need more time, for a test. And it wasn't looked upon as so crazy. But, even when I was in school, you would hear, oh, I'm dyslexic. And, it was oh, I can't, I flip letters around, and that you just thought that was, okay, so that's what it was. But I really did not know everything that is really involved in that, and how it really affects so many different pockets of life, and I think that that's what's so cool about the show, Otto, back to what you said, that we had the platform to showcase something, and anyone that's listening or watching this, whether you are, have this, diagnosis, or just to make you just be a kinder person to people that might have this, that you're not aware of, and to not be so judgy about certain things. So,
well, in the words that you hear a lot about a lot of things is you are not alone.
Yeah.
That there are people who can help you. There are people who have the same problems as you. And, it's something that can be helped. And you shouldn't feel bad about yourself. You have other things probably that are good.
Well, and that's what was so interesting. And I can't remember if it was on air or off air, but she was saying, with her mother who struggled, all these years, that her creative side of the brain was on overdrive, so she was so artistic and has all these amazing artsy things. We got our two parts of the brain. So it was just such an interesting, thing. And listen, the fact that we have this organization who's so progressive and that is constantly, and especially she was saying, it's going to get mandated in schools to recognize this and to have ways to, and help students that are struggling. And, that's in our community, the fact that that's in Nassau County, Long Island, is so amazing. So I think it's so important to showcase these, community-based organizations. And, what's horrible is, which I suspected is, COVID, these agencies really took a hit, during COVID, that especially if you were relying on volunteers, who most people that are able to volunteer are retired, and then hence those were the seniors that were, we were really trying to protect during this time, so it's just the implications of everything was just so, tied into one another. So,
that expands, by the way, into many, many, many things, like organizations that had members like the American Legion or whatever. People stopped going to meetings and many organizations are on the brink now. First of all, younger people really, in a lot of cases, do not have the time to be joiners. It's a different society we live in. People are working hard and longer and whatever, and they're just not joiners. So that's an issue. And then the older people, well, I'm not including you, Rebecca. You're not there yet, but people in your age bracket or older,
pre-60.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of people during COVID, all of a sudden, they got out of the habit of going to meetings. They didn't have meetings, and maybe they had them on Zoom, which is not quite the same in a lot of cases. I mean, we made the best of it, and it has worked out, frankly, in our case for this show, as a positive, a big positive, really. We're able to get a lot of people to put their time in. They don't have to give up a half a day to do it. They give up an hour and that's it. But
it's hard, and I mean, I think about that all the time, and especially, I remember, maybe it was last year or the year before, we had like a speech therapist on the show, and she was discussing how, that was so affected by the mask wearing. So children who were learning couldn't, we're at this disadvantage now, and they're seeing all the kind of ripple effects from that. I was even talking to one of my best friends, and she's got 4 kids, and she's, she power to her, because how she got through remote learning with 4 children, and the youngest one's like, 3 years old. So it was quite the household. But she was saying, like, she feels, her older one kind of fared better because he had more years of school and stuff. But her middle one, like, it was harder, like there were so many things, and she, felt like he was like behind, in a lot of this. So, I mean, it's just, that's what I think about so much. Of course, getting COVID is horrendous and super scary, but, the implications and the ripple effect of how everyone was affected in different ways is just crazy. But listen, there's organizations out there, and I do have hope that, we are kind of getting into a different groove where, you're still just trying to just forge the new path. We don't want to we call it the new normal, but I think that it's just it's important to know that there's these organizations are out there, and they've kind of figured out different ways, that things work. So it was great to showcase. That's my favorite part of this gig, guys, is to be able to showcase great organizations and people.
Now, a book club was mentioned during that, and what's the deal on the book club? Just for when is it? And
well, the book club meets usually here. It's facilitated by Gia. It's been going for years. People, I think the town has provided a certain number of Kindles, so you can read your book, your hardcover book, or you could get a Kindle. And they meet, I think, monthly or maybe bi-monthly. And Gia sets up a room. So you just call 311, just like any other Project Independence program. And I think they discuss titles to be read, and it just kind of varies. So you can call.
They meet at Clinton Martin?
Yes, usually, yes.
Right.
Clinton Martin Park, yes.
But I think, and listen, we got a new book, and I like that. Becky, you're going to have to pass along that information to Gia about Karen.
Yeah, I think Gia actually had an author. It might have been like a high school teacher or something. And that teacher wound up coming. We also have had Steve Israel wrote the book, and he came. So it's real exciting to have the author of the book. I mean,
and I love, and then she's talking my language, saying that it's going to could be turned into a movie on Netflix.
I know.
All right, sign me up. I'll add it to the roster.
Yeah, right. I don't know if I can. I don't know if I'm going to live that long. Those are sending me, Kristina.
Now, Netflix. There's another subject someday we should get into. Is the options for streaming and watching television.
We need someone on, because I'm telling you, it's a mess. I don't even know what I have anymore and what I don't have. Do I have Paramount? Do I have Hulu? Do I have Peacock? I mean,
And what do you need? I mean, every now, like
Netflix, HBO.
Stuff, right? Now, all of a sudden, this team is going to have its own streaming service. That team, How many streaming services?
Well, you know what? You brought up such a good point because, as I mentioned on the show before, my dad is not tech savvy at all. You would expect, he's not. He's on the younger senior side of things, but that's just never been my dad's, forte. And with the Yankees, he was totally at a loss. I guess it was like last year, I think, when they started it. And, he always watched it on TV. And listen, my dad will listen on the radio. And it's always amazing to me that he could understand what's happening on like his rinky dink like radio, which is really, I think, is a part of the brain that like is not as good anymore, like for like the younger generations. But he's able to do that. And he had called me, I'll never forget. And he was like, the Yankee says it's only streaming on Prime. And he's
Amazon,
like, what?
yes.
Yeah. And he was like at a loss. So I said, Dad, I'm going to buy you a Fire Stick. I set it up for him in the room. I set up I try to make it as easy as possible for him and when I say for him, it's actually easy as possible for me. So I don't have to get the constant phone calls that he's totally lost, because if you guys could only hear some of these phone calls I received from my dad when he was getting used to it. But, here, there was no other option. So it's not like he could watch it on TV or streaming. It was purely had to be streamed on. And then a couple of weeks, and Prime, I'll give it to everyone, right? Most people kind of familiar with Prime, and Amazon stuff. But then it was only on Apple TV, only on Apple app. And that really set my dad in line. But these are real topics. And I think that it's certainly something we all kind of have to figure out on the daily. So it's the new world.
On that note, I'll take this to a quick break. You're listening to Project Independence in You, our Talk of the Town segment, 88.1 FM and WCWP.org. We'll be right back after a quick break.
Take WCWP with you wherever you go with the WCWP app. Listen live 24/7 to all of our streams, all from one app. Plus, call the studios directly from the app and visit our social media. Download the app through the iOS App Store on Apple devices or the Google Play Store on Android by searching WCWP Radio, or visit WCWP.org for links. The WCWP app, available now on iOS and Android devices.
Okay, then. Welcome back.
Well, David, I came to the show because I am, like your father, a big Yankees fan.
Yes. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners, these are important topics.
I stand the New York Yankees organization because they're a bunch of jerks.
Don't forget about Evelyn.
Frank Steinbrenner and all those guys. I don't know what the hell they're doing there. They the YES Network. But then they won't let the YES Network on anything but DirecTV and Fios. And I think Cablevision might be carrying too for an extra fee, right?
Cablevision has it, yes.
So that's it. That's the only place you can get the games. So, all right. So I get one of them. I get DirecTV stream. Great. But then they make a deal with Amazon. MLB makes a deal with Amazon and with Apple TV to put certain games on Amazon and Apple TV. So now I have to have, I had Amazon because I have Prime. And I have Apple TV because I like a lot of the shows on Apple TV. But this is for the regular viewer or the less tech viewer. This is insane.
It is. Well, you know what? My dad is really going to love you, Dan, because after the show, I'm going to go upstairs and tell him that his plight is heard.
Well, here's a question, though. Apple TV. Do you have to have an Apple anything to use Apple TV?
No, you need a smart TV and download the app.
It's just like it's like a streaming service, Otto. It's just like, having Netflix or Hulu or whatever. It's its own streaming service.
Well, the other part of it is you need about 3 remotes, all right? First, like your father, you have your remote that comes with the Cablevision or with the Fios. Then you need the remote for the TV that switches the source from 1 to 2 or maybe to 3, depending on what you got to do. Then you need a little remote with the Fire Stick that controls the Fire Stick.
You can simplify all of this, Otto. Very simple.
I can handle it.
I got rid of my cable box a long time ago. You get a smart TV, everything's in the TV, and the one remote for the TV should be able to handle everything, which it does, unless you get a sound bar, which I have, which has it.
Yes.
Well, let's throw the DVR into that equation also.
What's a DVR?
Well, you can record shows.
A cable box, but a streaming service has a DVR too, but you just use your regular remote for it.
Yeah.
Well, you got the DVR, you got on demand, you got a lot of different things.
It's all right, Otto. You are talking, this is making me laugh because this is literally what happens upstairs with my dad. Because we have cable he has his Fire Stick remote. And what we did do was, sync the TV with the cable remote. So he doesn't have too many. But it is like, it's comical, the whole thing, because I try to explain it and simplify it as much. But this is real. And here's my dad, who's a younger senior. So I could only imagine an older senior who loves the Yankees and looks forward to that. If my dad didn't have me and my mom, who, we subscribe to all these apps, he'd be totally lost. There is no way he's ever seeing the Yankees again. He is just on the deck listening to the radio for the rest of his life at that point. So
I don't mind listening to baseball on the radio. I just don't happen to like.
I can decipher the radio too.
I'm a big radio fan. I grew up listening to baseball on the radio, but
me too.
But I just think that they're doing a disservice to their fans as a Yankee fan to split themselves up like this and make it more difficult for the older viewer.
Right.
10 years from now, we're not even going to be having this conversation because there won't be cable boxes anymore. There won't be video services by these companies. It's all going to be streamed. And with any luck, they'll combine some of these streams so we don't have to own, I must own 6 different streams and pay.
Yeah, me too.
I know, right? You guys are talking about this, and I have this vision when I was a little girl, and my grandfather and my step-grandmother, they lived in the city, 24th floor. And I used to go there on the weekends, and of course, my entire family is from the Bronx, huge Yankee fans. But I read on a Saturday or on a Sunday, he'd be sitting on the couch. He'd have the radio on, listening to a game. He'd have the TV on, sound off, watching another game. He'd have the Times sports section reading it, and you were not allowed to talk at all. It was like I was invisible. And if I dared walk in his way of the television, because he's reading and listening, he'd be like, just move, And I mean, and that was streaming back in the day, in the 70s.
I grew up in that world, all right?
Right.
I didn't have a television until I was probably about 13 years old. And the Brooklyn Dodgers, the New York Giants, the New York Yankees were all on radio. And you would never, ever walk down the street and where I live anyhow, without hearing a game on the radio. People were listening all the time. And that was the way it was. That was life back then.
Well, I grew up the first third of my life without cable. So Channel 11, which was attached to an antenna on the roof, were the Yankees, and Channel 9 was the Mets.
Exactly.
And all the games, or you listened on the radio to the games. That was it. That was all we had, and it was simpler and easier and better, and probably.
Well, you had 2, 4, 5, 7, 9, 11, and 13.
21 if you had that funny looking antenna.
Well, and then all of a sudden, this thing UHF came along, where you put a little round rabbit ear on the top of your TV.
Channel 21.
You got a couple other channels. Now you get 380 channels, and you don't want all you want is about 15 of them. Oh well.
Well, that's the plight of what's happening, and I think these are real. And I think, Dan had a great point that they need to think about their fans, these
they don't, they care about
teams.
the money.
Yeah, but it's horrible because, there are a huge portion of people that have loved, these different teams, whatever it might be, forever. And the fact that it's so difficult, they're assuming that everyone's able to do that. And I think it's just like, and Dan's right. We'll see what happens. We'll see how this all unfolds, as the years kind of go on. But
it's like you can't afford to buy a ticket, and you can't afford to watch them on television. What do it's like, what? Hey, it may just come back to radio. What do you know? And people have to just sit by their radio and listen.
Well, I probably, this is one of my pet peeves, all right? I had season tickets to the New York Jets from the first year they were in business, 1964. And they were in Shea Stadium, which was great because I lived in Manhasset at the time. We could take the train or be there in 15, 20 minutes. Okay, fine. So they moved to New Jersey, and they're still in New Jersey. They're the New York Jets and the New York Giants because they're both in the same place. Okay, that's fine. So I still keep the season tickets. And then finally we get to the point where they came along with this thing, PSL. You had to buy a seat license. All right. That didn't give you the seat. That gave you the right to buy the tickets. All right. I had 4 tickets. my 4 tickets at that point in time would have cost me $16,000 to buy the license, to pay $120 for each ticket to go to the game, So for 1 year, they had the upper deck at that stadium where you didn't have to buy a seat license. So I switched from all the way down to all the way up to where you could hardly see the field. I did that for 1 year. And you talk about the fans. They did not care about the fans. They really didn't. All they cared about was making money and getting the fans to pay for the new stadium. And
well, this is a bigger issue, and it's an issue that's very passionate to me because I'm someone who likes to attend, concerts and has spent a lot of money attending, those concerts. But I mean, this is a conversation that it literally always happens, because if anyone knows, and I'm not going to say this particular place where you get these, tickets from, but the fees are astronomical, so you'll get this, you say, okay, all right, I could do that. You'll see the base price, and then the fees are absurd. And it's something that is really an issue. And there's some artists who kind of try and, help that out, for their fans and stuff, but it's really a real problem, because it's literally.
I know who you're talking about. Anytime you buy almost anything, you have to go through that operation. And, it's like another one now is, and I understand, as you know, I'm into technology, all right? But if you buy 10 tickets to go to an event with 10 different people and I'm the one who buys them, now I go through a major hoop-de-doo to get the tickets to the people.
I know.
And some of them don't have smartphones.
I know.
All right. So now.
And a lot of these things now are, only digital. You don't even have the option to, bring your paper ticket with you. It's only mobile entry only. And I always think about that, listen, I mean, obviously it's not a big deal for me, but that thought always goes into my mind because, I work with seniors and I'm like, you're just assuming that everyone has, a smartphone and has the ability to do this mobile, thing. And I really don't know, frankly, what if someone just doesn't have one? What do they do? I don't know.
Well, there was, and I don't think it exists anymore, but in the particular stadium I do go to a game a year. They did have a window somewhere in that stadium that you had to find where you could handle another method. But I don't think they do
but
that
the hoopla that's probably involved in all that?
Yeah, it's big time.
It's these are listen, these are real life things, guys.
Well, I mean, the facts of life are that they're not too concerned about the generation that can't do that. But there are people in earlier generations that are not all technically up to speed either.
And look, listen, we don't know what someone else is going through. There could be different, back to our first segment, right? The impacts of dyslexia and the fact that her mom, it impacts her being able to do anything on the internet, any kind of email. I mean, these are all things, and that's just one, dyslexia we were talking about. Not the other host of different things can have, a similar situation. So I think it's, people need to be a little more inclusive and aware of these things, I think, is the overall message.
Or make voice activation a lot better.
Absolutely.
Totally.
So absolutely. Because that is something that you would think it would come a little it's not getting better, and you've heard it, any of these voice to text. I mean,
it's a mess.
Crazy.
Get in some trouble with those.
Because they're literally, and they're also will change, if you say I, it'll be me. And it's I said I, why are we changing it to me or her or she? And it's I just said I. Why is it changing to these things? But that in itself is a whole nother show because.
Well, you're right, because it's interesting that about this hodgepodge thing that I do when I do a lot of other stuff. And it does have the ability, if you hit certain keys, you can do audio input to do the thing on your computer.
Right.
But the problem I found is that it takes me just as long to correct what it did.
Yes.
As me just typing it right in.
Because listen, the text messages my mom has sent me, I could always tell when she's voice texting because they're crazy. They're so all over the place. Nothing makes any sense. And I try really hard to like, it's like a brain challenge to like decipher what she just is actually asking me to do, so
right. Yeah. Right. I know what you mean.
you would expect that that's something I hopefully in the future will get a little stronger and clearer, because it's quite the mess. And you could like really send something that you did not mean to send.
I mean, just leaving out a comma could change entire sentences.
But what's interesting, and that's a wonderful point, Beck, because once again, these are all like great topics for shows, is that that's in this texting world, things can be so misconstrued,
Right.
because you're leaving out, a comma or a period or, just an overall tone. When someone's speaking to you, you can kind of hear their way they're saying it, or, their inference, whatever it might be. Texting, that's all bets are off. So you could really get upset or hurt or think something, from something that it was just, taking the wrong way. So
I have a theory about that, all right? And I do use text messages, as you well know. But I believe there's a limit on what should. If you go more than 2 text messages back and forth about something, you're better off just making a phone call and say, okay, let's talk about it for a minute. And it clears things up a lot.
It's funny.
Quicker.
Well, you sound like my brother, who inevitably ends up yelling at my mom, saying that she's blowing up his phone, sending way too many texts back, because my mom's like a rapid texter, so it'd be like boom, 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 like like Barbara, like she'll just go. It's like the way her brain works. But my brother says the same thing. He's like I can't, and that's when James has left the chat, and he is no longer participating in the conversation. But these are all that I think we need to really think about.
So I actually have a question from really a good friend of mine, and he's a therapist, master life coach, and this is going back to our first guest. I just wish she was here, but I think it's something that we can probably come up with some suggestions. He says, how can we convince adults with dyslexia to get help, because most of his clients won't, because of the stigma and the diagnosis. It's tough. It's
but I think a literacy Nassau experience is, everyone is there, because they're trying to, improve their literacy, right? And I think that having people, and I'm sure the other staff on the team are just as, passionate as Karen is. I think, to really just explain to them like the impact. And that's why I love the group work. And I think that's why these group work situations help really well, because that's interesting, because I don't really remember when she was first on, it was more of a one-on-one kind of basis of teaching. But I think being in these group settings now, you look around and you start realizing that you're not alone in this situation, that there's so many people who are having the same kind of struggles, and the fact that they have took this, and I just always feel that that's a more comforting situation,
right,
and
that you're not alone,
right? And it's just getting someone there is it, but I think when to explain like all that you're missing out on, I don't think they realize it sometimes, because I mean, look at us just sitting here listening to Karen, hearing all these different worlds, and these people who have been living their whole lives, not knowing certain things or being able to do certain things. And like, it's like with anything, the fact that you could open someone's world up,
right.
and it's.
And what you're saying just is, I'm thinking to myself, how we change the word to control, to manage,
right.
Maybe the whole kind of stigma thing can be changed to empowerment. Yeah. I mean, isn't it more empowering to know that, oh, this is why I have difficulty reading.
Well, what my brain just went to, I thought of Otto was talking, when we've had this conversation about hearing aids, right? This is a totally different realm, but the same kind of thing. Yeah. And the people who are hesitant because of the stigma of a hearing aid, right? And they don't want to, for whatever it might be. But I remember Otto saying, like, you don't know what you're not hearing until you can hear it. Like, he's like, and I remember Otto, I'll remember so well when you said, the faucet. You didn't like know like that water made like a sound coming out of the faucet. You know, like it's these little things, and that is empowerment, because now you like literally opened your world up to experience these things and hear it, you know, and whatever it might be. It's just, you know, and I think that is the best kind of route for
I think it's very, very similar. Very similar.
And we'll continue with this. We'll be right back. We have to take a quick break. You're listening to Project Independence in You, Community Talk Radio. We'll be back with our final Talk of the Town segment. You're listening to 88.1 FM and WCWP.org. We'll be right back.
So I get this call from my grandma, and she's like,
"What's a podcast and how much does it cost?"
So I tell her, podcasts are like radio shows, but you can download them on any device and listen to them anywhere at any time, and they're free. And then she says,
"I see, but where can you find good ones?"
And I'm like, go to wcwp.org/podcast and check out the lineup of original shows, or download any podcast app on your phone or tablet and search for LIU Studios. And she's all like,
"Oh, that sounds easy."
And then she asked me what an app is.
LIU Studios Podcasts, available on any podcast app. You know, those little button things on your phone screen. Just ask your grandkids.
And welcome back to Project Independence in You, Community Talk Radio on 88.1 FM and WCWP.org. We're in Talk of the Town, and we will get to that. But Mike's question, I think, kind of stirred up a lot of, I want to say, energy from Otto, Kristina, and I. And, you know, that whole word stigma, which we use a lot, is it going to be a great thing? You know, we should just have a show all about different stigmas, and how do you kind of convince someone who might have something that is a stigma, that empowering them, knowing what they have and the places that there are, and, you know, experts to help, that's you know, that's out there. But one other thing he said I liked, he said that he said he teaches most clients that texting really should be for yes or no. Yeah. You know, have a great day. Right. You know, stay away from things, because you can't, like we were talking about, you know, you can't put inflection into your text, you know, emotion, and, you know, emojis, you know, aren't real, like, you know, so, but, you know, he said, thanks. That's a great perspective that we were talking about before. But anyway, I think, you know, we should definitely do a show on stigma, and, you know, the hearing aid thing was so, you know, important, because the other thing, Otto, we talked a lot about was people, you know, if they can't hear anything, they also are isolated.
Of course. So it's so like, it's like, and that's it's with all these things.
Right. And just like, you know, and just like Karen's mom, you know, it's isolating. You know, does she want to go out to a restaurant with friends? She can't read the menu. Does she want to, you know, get in the car and learn how to drive? And you can't. You have to take a permit test, you know. So it's very isolating. So it's you know, it's important. So I think when someone has the correct diagnosis, then you can get help when you get the hearing aid.
And I do think, you know, we were saying, you know, towards the tail, we were entering the break, you know, like with all of these things and everything, right, that we talked to, because in just the greater sense, the education piece, and to, you know, have things more talked about and made more aware of, you know, Becky, you had said, you know, about, like, I think we were during the break, but, you know, with mental health, you know, that was a topic. And I've seen, you know, it was not as talked about, you know, now.
Talk about stigma.
I mean,
right?
now, and like, it's wonderful. Like, on social media, on my Instagram, I follow endless mental health awareness, different kind of pages, right? And a lot of my friends do, a lot of people, you know, so like the fact that this is open to, you know, my world, or on the internet, I could look up something, like it's certainly something that, you know, has some steps to go, obviously, but it's, you know, as time has progressed, it's been more acceptable. You know, I had mentioned on a previous show that my friend whose kid goes to school, actually in a Town North Hempstead school, the teacher provides time for like just mindfulness breathing time for kids. And he's in 5th grade. You know, like, so that's so cool that that's like now part of, learn. And I'm sure that's not an isolated thing, like there is more of an awareness to speak up about certain things. And I think like that is the positive thing, right? But that's because that's taking time, right? So it's about talking about it, about educating people. And I think with this dyslexia diagnosis, the fact that it was just 2018 that it got added to this list of, things on an IEP for school, like I think as that, shifts and things it becomes more aware of. And I think that that's all we can do,
Well,
as
if you think about it, there's two sides to stigma. All right.
Mhm.
There's the self-perception stigma
Yeah.
that you enforce on yourself. And then there's society's
exactly.
enforcement of a stigma that's put onto the person.
Right.
Yeah.
So, there's your perception of what the issue is, and then somebody else's perception.
And your perception is largely based upon the societal impression of it,
Well,
so
I think it plays a part in why people don't get hearing.
Of course.
It's a sign of weakness. I can't
aging.
hear. I can.
Because aging in itself, that great point, is a stigma, right? Like, and you had said that in the earlier segment. It's almost like a disease, right?
Right.
You're like aging, and people, I think you just need to be more aware, of just, and listen, we're all human. We're all going to have our predisposed opinions and judgments and whatnot. But I think, with stuff like this, it is important to kind of check things that you might, have just like assumed in your head about certain stuff. So it's all just like, I think like everyone's just got to try a little harder.
Well, it's such a basic view of life to me is when you're born, there is no checklist that says, I want this, I want that, So just count it good fortune and gratefulness on your part.
Yeah.
If some of these boxes were checked when you were born, it is not a skill on your part.
Yeah.
So don't look down on somebody else who didn't have that.
I know, because it's such as when you say it, Otto,
it seems so basic.
It is, and that's like in your brain. Like, so the fact that it gets muddied, is just like so insane. But we could clearly talk about this forever. I want to hit on something because we're in our last segment, and I just want to touch upon some upcoming programs, which also kind of goes into our topic. I just have to give a shout out. March is Social Work Month. The theme is breaking barriers, which social workers clearly do. So I have to give a special shout out to all of our hardworking Project Independent social workers who really are just making such a difference. I was saying to Paula,
including you, Kristina.
Including you.
It's like, it was just so amazing. The other day I was just saying, with Paula that like, just to see it in action. I was at my computer and there was one of our social workers had met with a constituent for the first time. And like, just to see, like, right after that, I got a checklist for our Help at Home program that the senior was interested in, a checklist for the Rebuilding Together program that we have. She wanted to join the advisory. And I was like, how great is this? Like throughout this, and there was probably so many other things, but those are all stuff that comes to me. Like, and she wanted to be signed up for our email newsletter, so it was just so cool. Like here was this one conversation with this resident who just in that one conversation with a social worker got connected to all these services. And I was like, this is great. Like this is like, it was like one of those moments like, and that's just one example. And all the other, bazillion services that go on is just amazing. So shout out to all of our social workers. And March is also Nutrition Month, which is another one. That and mental health, I think, are two of our favorite hot topics on this show. And next week we have a pre-recorded show, but on the 17th, on St. Patty's Day, we will come back with Sue, who has been on our show before from Cornell Cooperative Extension. She will be talking about deciphering food claims, nutrition labels versus food package claims, which I'm so excited about. And also, I want to remind people, our advisory committee meeting is next week, March 8th at Clingy Martin Park at 10 a.m. Or you can do it virtually. I booked a speaker also from Cornell who is going to talk about nutrition for seniors. So we're just going to stay all in the theme. And, there's really such great, because listen, and all of the hats I wear in PI, I do a lot of researching for different things. And when I was scheduling for nutrition and I wanted to get stuff in the newsletter, there was such great resources online. And I love a tip. I've said it a bazillion times on this show, but I just want to give it because it is Nutrition Month, that just some healthy eating tips for older adults. So make eating a social event. Try and enjoy friends with family members, or, even if it's a virtual kind of dining, you're able to meet with your grandkids virtually. And that's like a lot of things are going on to make it more of an experience. I always think about that. It's so sad to like have to always eat alone, and that's something we also always take for granted. So that's one tip. Drink plenty of liquids. Listen, I know drinking plenty of liquids comes with going to the bathroom. So it's always this fine line, right, of you don't want to do it, but it really is so important. And I've seen it firsthand how important it is, whether even if you have coffee and tea, you need to have some water and milk and juice. And it's just so important to kind of nourish your body with, the appropriate liquids. Add a touch of spice. Limiting salt is really important as you get older. We always talk about that too. But you could have fresh and dried herbs and spices such as basil, oregano, parsley can add some flavor without adding salt. So I think that's a great little.
That's good. Good advice.
Make most of your food choices. Older adults need plenty of nutrients, but fewer calories. So it's important to make every bite count. Foods that are full of vitamins and minerals are the best way to get what you need. This I've even seen with my own parents, who I said are younger seniors. Listen, my dad, I'm pretty sure, can live on, Entenmann's donuts, for the rest of his life. But it really is important because, to have those, to still get that nutrition in, even though your body is kind of needing fewer calories. Be mindful of your nutrient needs. You need to be aware that you might not be getting enough nutrients such as calcium, vitamin D, potassium, dietary fiber, vitamin B12, proteins, so it's important to kind of find ways. And there's different supplements, if you're, and that I think we might touch upon also next in the next 2 weeks. And keep food safe. Discard food if it has an off odor, a flavor, a texture. Refer to the use by dates for a guide to freshness. Canned or frozen foods store well if shopping trips are difficult. You could also listen to an old show we did talking all about food safety and food storage too. So that's on our Project Independence website, or on the WCWP YouTube page. You can watch one of our interviews. So those were just like some really great.
Yeah, use those freezers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's important, and because I know it's hard, right? So especially if you're a senior, to go, to the grocery store, it takes a lot. Like I come out, sweating and exhausted. There's a lot that goes into that.
Hydration is an issue for all seniors because of the reason that you described.
Yeah.
So I have started filling this thing up.
No, and it's so important.
And making a point of drinking it.
And you have to, and that's what it is. You have to really make it, because I'm always yelling at everyone to stay hydrated, right? So I'm always yelling at my mom, my dad. I said, you need to be very conscious of it, because my grandpa always was dehydrated throughout when he was it was constantly a thing. And then it's a running joke in our family, because I told him, I appealed to his Greekness, and I said, Grandpa, just we'll put some lemon in water. It just changes your, and he loved that, right? So it was a running joke in our, because he would always just be saying to everyone, Kristina told me I need to drink lemon water, right? He took it very serious. But so we're always, but that something like that can spice it up, right? So you feel like you're not just drinking, and they have so many things now that can spice up your water, right? And it's just something that really has impacts for people of all ages too.
That's a question to keep in mind when we have the lady on with the cooperative part of it, is when you drink something you think is healthy, it may not be healthy.
Well, that's exactly what she'll be talking about.
We should talk about that as far as food is concerned.
Absolutely. Too. So we will certainly. Yeah, it's all these things. And what I also liked in my researching, there was healthy snacking tips, because listen, we all enjoy snacking, and that's something that can get us all in trouble. But I like these little tips. It was build your own, make your own trail mix. You could throw in some unsalted nuts. You could add seeds, dried fruit, plain popcorn, and you could even sometimes sprinkle some chocolate chips, which is speaking my language on that one. Prep ahead. I think this is so huge for kind of keeping yourself, on track, is the preparation, right? And that's why people don't do it, because it involves prep, right? So that's like with anything, nobody really is just looking to prep. But
There's
it really
another angle on this whole thing, all right?
Mhm.
I'm going through a little bit of a dental issue that's going to come up, all right? And I like nuts. But if you have a dental problem,
Yes.
nuts can be a problem.
Yep.
So one of the
Get nut
questions would be,
butters.
Yeah.
say again?
Nut butters. They make every nut you could get nut butters, creamy nut butter,
I didn't know that.
cashew butter, walnut butter. They make all kinds of nut butters.
Now, does the butter have fat in
It depends. You could get
Depends
like
on what it is, yeah.
organic, you could get salted up, just like you would get a peanut butter.
Yeah.
it? But that's a good question. You know,
Well, write them down, Otto.
Yeah.
Also, make it a combo. Use different food groups to build a satisfying snack. I really like this one. So you could have like yogurt and berries, or apple with nut butter, or whole grain crackers with turkey and avocado. So it's like there's little quick things. And I had mentioned my mom was, sick and she was in the hospital. She's out now, thank God. But there was like little things that I was trying to find around the house, while I was at work, that she could have little snacks or, lunch, like little things that don't involve an intensive cooking kind of situation. So this was very beneficial to me. Eat vibrant vegetables, try raw vegetables with dips, try dipping bell peppers, carrots, cucumbers in hummus. I'm a huge hummus fan. I love hummus. And they have like the little pre-portioned little cups. Love it. A guacamole or a low-fat yogurt sauce. Wash and enjoy. Apples, pears, grapes, fresh berries are great on the go snacks when you're looking for something like that has a little sweetness. Stock your fridge. Keep cut up fruits and vegetables visible and within reach in the fridge for a convenient anytime snack. That was possibly my most favorite, because I think we've all been there where we start off with really high hopes and you put it in your drawer and then you just forget about it, right? So I'm constantly trying to always I put like things in, well, it's part of my organization also, everything's in like an acrylic clear container. So I could see all my strawberries, my blueberries, my clementine. And it's more likely I could see my husband, because he always says that to me, like, well, I didn't see it. I didn't know it was there. So now he has no excuse because it's all quite visible to do. So I just thought those were great little tips, And
well, I just got into pineapple chunks.
Love it.
I go to this, we don't talk names of stores, but teams we talk about, but not stores, where they have great pineapple chunks. And I wound up now getting them one of these things every week.
Yeah, really delicious. Good. And it's so
I understand
good for you.
Pineapples are good for you too.
Pineapples are very good for you. We are very big on the pineapples. I even bought my husband this contraption spirally thing to put in a pineapple that's very easy to do. To cut it and create that. So it's to create little like rings of pineapple. So all these really good things. And
Kristina, I don't know why, but for some reason, and Otto too, I'm getting like nostalgic with all what we're talking about. And I was thinking about when I was a kid and we had all these fields near my house, and it didn't matter after school, on the weekends, you could run to these fields and there would be kids there. You'd pull together a quick game of something, or you would just play with your friends. And we were out the whole day. There was one water fountain. One. And we would all put our face up on the edge, drink and drink. You'd be parched in the summer, and we'd be drinking. The boys would be gargling, spitting it out. And we're all sharing this one, I can assure you, water fountain.
With the water going up like this, a little weak. And
very weak. Your face is basically up against it. And then, if that wasn't working, which was frequent, we would run to someone's house and use the hose.
Yep.
Right. And all these things that, we did back then and we survived. But today, forget about it.
Let me tell you today, and this is what's, as I had mentioned, a lot of my friends have children.
That's why you're all dehydrated.
And they all have these, they all walk around with these reusable water things now. Yeah. And I was like, well, at least you're teaching, your children the importance of it. But it is so funny, Beck, because, the smell of the hose water, I could visualize it and actually, as I sit here, remember it.
Sometimes warm, sometimes
right. It did right. No preference. But
and it was nice when someone had a new hose, because then you really got the smell.
But I also, when we are rapidly approaching the end of the show, our email newsletter just came out. All of the different upcoming programs and groups are all being promoted in there. Of course, there's a little bit about nutrition too. If you are interested in receiving the e-newsletter, call 311 or 516-869-6311 to get any of this information, and we will gladly get it over to you.
All right. Well, that's it. I can't believe it. Another great show, Kristina. Thank you so much. And Dan and Otto. It was a great topic, great questions, and we do have a great show coming up next week. So listen to Project Independence in You, Community Talk Radio on 88.1 FM and WCWP.org. Have a great weekend.